Welcome back to my Thoughtful Thursdays video channel where we talk about important topics both inside and outside the church. I am so excited to be in this series during Pride Month. Happy Pride. I'm taking a look at all of the churches in the Peoria area that are either open and affirming or they are celebratory of LGBTQ plus community. And so today I am so excited to be here with Debra Avery. She is here at United Presbyterian. Thank you again so much for being here on my channel. I'm so happy and honored that you are willing to do it. And you're wearing Chuck Taylor's. Let's make sure we get those. There we go. I'm wearing my Birkenstocks, but I should have worn my Chucks as well. I didn't get the memo.
One of many pairs.
So, Debra, I'd love for you to tell my viewers just a little bit more about you, maybe on a personal level, like where are you from? How long have you been here in the Peoria area? What are your official jobs?
I moved here, I think my ministry is going to be identified always and forever with the beginning of COVID. I was here 2 Sundays in the pulpit, and then we shut down the meeting in person and moved to meeting online in March last year. We got to see each other for a minute, and then everybody became 2 inches tall. I moved here from Oakland, California, where I was the pastor of First Presbyterian Church, and then for 2 years I was working on a new church development project called Justice House, where we were working to build spiritual community among activists, which was really a beautiful thing to do. I've been kind of all over. I've lived in Mexico City, lived in Tokyo. I grew up in Iowa. I served in Springfield, Illinois for a few years. Just kind of from all over.
You really are from all over. That's amazing. Well, luckily there's not much difference between Oakland and Peoria. So right. Yeah, right.
Only like 200,000 and more.
Oh, okay, never mind. You're right. There's a major difference between that. This was the very first church that was an affirming church here in Peoria, United Presbyterian. I think that's what I've heard before.
Actually, that's news to me.
Okay.
I knew that we were early on, but I didn't know that we were first. That could very well be.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
That's what I hear. That's what I hear. So that's absolutely amazing. I applaud you. I applaud your congregation. Those that are watching, I'm assuming that people that worship here will be watching some of this video maybe too. When we're talking about fully affirming churches, we have to kind of distinguish that between churches that are maybe welcoming of people. And I wanted to know, what does that actually look like here in your church between being like really affirming and celebratory versus just being welcoming of that community?
You know, the whole thing of welcoming is really important to really talk about. A lot of churches say they're welcoming, and it means that you can just come in and everybody gets a smile and a handshake, but sometimes that's a cover for things like love the sinner, hate the sin. And I've had more LGBTQ plus people tell me that does more damage than anything that they receive. Because the idea that you're welcome, we welcome all sinners, Jesus lived with all sinners, puts LGBTQ people in a particular place of being identified by their identity as a sinner. And that is not welcome. That is not welcoming. I'm just going to be clear about that. It's not about sin. Welcoming means we're all kinds of people in this world across a whole spectrum of gender identity and who people love, and it's really important to embrace that welcome. I would theologically say that if you're going to be welcoming, then that includes everything. So for us to be a welcoming congregation is really to say we are affirming, we are open, we celebrate, we include people, all kinds of people, no matter your orientation, no matter anything, in leadership in the church. The PCUSA, the Presbyterian Church, has been ordaining LGBTQ people for I think we affirmed it about 10 years ago, actually. It was not soon enough. Our Book of Order, which is our way of ordering our lives as communities of faith, we have the option and the ability to ordain LGBTQ people as elders, deacons, and ministers of word and sacrament, but that doesn't mean that it's happening. So once we affirmed that in 2011, the work of those of us doing advocacy in the church around LGBTQI plus concerns has shifted to that ordination piece to say, hey, now that we can do this, don't forget. You know, please pay attention. Please be be open and affirming in terms of your ordination practices as well with individual congregations.
Yeah. Oh, that's fascinating. So on the books, it's written in, and so now you're just kind of working to get it into practice more.
In a lot of ways, we faced this as women. When we first received ordination, the possibility for ordination, women couldn't get their feet in the door. So it takes a minute for institutional practices to match institutional rules.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah, so that's the journey that we're on now with LGBTQ ordination.
Like, what kind of sets your church apart here? Out of all the other churches in Peoria, there are a lot. I think within like the Tri-County area, there's like 600 something churches. So what is it about your church that's kind of unique and distinct? Like, kind of toot your own horn here a little bit.
Yeah, I was driving around with my sister last weekend who came down from Iowa to visit, and she's like, there are churches everywhere in this town. Like, everywhere you turn, there's a church. We put a lot of emphasis on intergenerational engagements. Like, we really want our kids to be leading in worship and be part of worship. We have a preschool here, which is known around the city for its engagement with nature. And if you've ever driven by our property, you know, you'll see this beautiful landscape that we have around us.
Yep.
We have hiking trails in the back. These are the kinds of things that really help us connect with all kinds of people. We have folks who are always on the lookout for somebody new and always going up to them and saying, hey, come to coffee hour, or hey, did you know we have a Bible study, or hey, you know, here's how you can get involved. We want people to be part of this sort of multi-generational community that we're building here.
I know it's very true. Whenever I came to your installation here in the building, I was really impressed that you guys had like a little children's lesson like right here in the thing. Like, they brought the children out, and I was just like, wow, this is really cool. We get to see this and be a part of it, and it really is this intergenerational type thing that you're talking about. So.
Yeah, it's a really high value for us, and I think that the part of being open and affirming and welcoming, that's all part of that, right? Like, we really want to show the hospitality of God, and when God gets upset with people, it's because folks haven't been hospitable or caring of each other, and that's one thing that we really, we have a high value of that.
So I know that you are an Enneagram 8. My wife is also an Enneagram 8, and so I always appreciate the directness from an Enneagram 8. And so when I hear you speaking, I know that you are a strong ally, and I appreciate that, and I love that about you. But I also know that being an Enneagram 8 comes with some pushback, and I can imagine with how strong of an ally you are and how strong and a beautiful voice that you have for the least and the lost. I imagine that you get some pushback from people. I just want to know, like, how do you deal with that? I imagine some of it's hurtful, and what do you do with that?
One of the things that pastors have to struggle with is finding balance between the pastor, prophet, priest role, right? The pastor role, which is taking care of people, the priestly role, which is sort of monitoring and managing the worship and the life of the congregation that has to do with how we address and go towards God. And then the prophetic role, which is really leaning into what Jesus did, what Jesus talked about, how he lived and moved. And Jesus actually was living into how the prophets who went before him lived and moved. And so, yeah, I think I tend to overfunction, if I overfunction in some way, in the prophetic role, which is taking my concern and care and bringing it out to the front.
Yep.
And that is tricky, and it is difficult. Part of the Enneagram 8 is also being able to do that compartmentalizing and do that thinking. So if I can lean into that strategic thinking a little bit and trust that a little bit, then the prophetic side that is that stronger voice, that, you know, advocacy voice, can be more effective on the one hand, because you can't just stand out there and yell.
I've got to imagine also because of your allyship, then that has severed some relationships probably, maybe family and friends. How have you dealt with that in the past?
Yeah, that's complicated too and difficult, right? I know when the Presbyterian Church USA decided to, finally came to the decision to permit ordination of same-gender loving people, and marriage too, that we lost churches. And I know this is happening with our Methodist siblings, it has happened with our Anglican and Episcopal siblings, it's happened in every sort of mainline tradition, that as churches, as denominations begin to open themselves to these kinds of being more welcoming, actually truly welcoming and hospitable places, that some folks don't know how to reconcile that with what they've been taught. And I say what they've been taught because I think a lot of our theology has been built on the theologies of the past, and it becomes a very shaky thing when people start to see that some of their theology is being reshaped or removed. So as more people understand, people outside the church understand that we're not about binary thinking, wrong, right, left, right, blue, red, whatever those things are, we start to open ourselves up to bigger possibilities of collaboration and community building and so on. And I think that makes us more approachable by folks who think the church is full of you-know-what.
We're in a Presbyterian church. You're a Presbyterian pastor. I just want to know, I know that there are two main wings of the Presbyterian church, two denominations, if you want to call it that. And I know that they are very different. And so I wanted to I know that we've got some people that now probably are watching this that maybe come from that LGBTQ community. They're like, hooray, I can go to the Presbyterian church. But at the same time, I also know that both the wings are very different on this thing and on other issues as well. I want to know, could you give us a brief synopsis of kind of the history between the two and what the two are?
Well, first of all, I'll say there's more than two.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. There's a bunch. And I think if, kind of as a joke, if one thing that Presbyterians are known for is schism. We know how to split. We're really good at it. We've been doing it almost since the Reformation. This actually is, I think, true of the church in general. Like we've been splitting since Jesus. Who believed this, who believed that. But in the Presbyterian church, I think a major split happened around the issue of enslavement. There were Presbyterians involved in writing the Articles of the Confederacy. There were Presbyterians involved in writing the Declaration of Independence, which mentioned nothing about women or people of color, black people at that point. There were Presbyterians involved in writing the Constitution, but the church split in between what was sort of the northern church and the southern church in the 1850s. There was a long sort of coming back together happening, and it started to look like reunification was going to happen I would say in the 60s. There was finally a unification of the northern and the southern church. But when that began to look like it was happening, some folks in the Presbyterian tradition said, we can't abide women in leadership, right? This is not biblical, we're not going to do it. So they pulled to the side. We have a confession called the Confession of 1967. The Confession of 67 talks about diversity and the importance of diversity, and some folks were not into thinking about, we were still into segregation, and we were really not interested in doing that as a church. So folks pulled out for those reasons too. There's been some movement over the years, some changing, but by and large, what I recommend to people is with any church, ask your deepest questions right out the gate. Like, visit a church, might look great. Meet with a pastor, ask them their position. If you can't find it on the website, ask them. We have it right on our website about LGBTQ inclusion. Our brochure talks about some of the moves that we're making towards thinking about racial equity. Our denomination is moving in both of those directions in full-throated, solid ways. And we have a Matthew 25 initiative, which talks about the eradication of systemic poverty, addressing racism, institutional racism, and thinking about what it is to be churches that are growing and welcoming. So if you can't find it on a website, I would just say to people, just ask it straight up, because you don't want to be blindsided. You don't want to be tricked.
That's right.
And it's really hard to tell. Even within PCUSA, there's a range of acceptance and welcome.
I appreciate that response, because I know that coming out of the evangelical church world, it's really popular right now to kind of hide your views on it, because I think people realize, like, oh, this is not a popular opinion right now, but we're really biblical. So we know it's not popular, but we're biblical, and so we've got to hide it so that people can't instantly find our views on LGBTQ. And so then people assume, well, they don't say anything, so they must be accepting, loving, and they get there, and it's the kind of bait and switch. You realize that you're not.
I yearn for the day when we can say the words, we are biblical, and not have it be code for we reject LGBTQ people, because we are a biblical church. We are 100% biblical. And it's the same way with evangelical, right? People are like, oh, well, you're not evangelical. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm totally evangelical, in the sense of the Greek root of the word.
That's right.
Right? The evangelion is really about sharing the message of Jesus. And we 100% share the message of Jesus here at United Presbyterian. I mean, that's who we are.
Right. My next question for you is kind of a fun one. It's just tell me something that's completely random and unexpected about you that maybe even people here in your congregation don't know.
It's really a hard question. I am pretty transparent. Like, I'm kind of a what you see is what you get kind of person.
Yep.
So, but I think people may not know that when I was in Oakland, I had a small business called Pies for the Revolution.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, Pies for the Revolution. And I would bake for activist events and bring food in to serve folks while they were, maybe they were protesting, or maybe they were having a meeting, or maybe this was an organizational gathering for Black leadership or something, and I would bring in the food and leave the food and then go away.
Yeah.
And it was, no one ever paid me for it. It wasn't really a business, but I was sort of known to do that.
Yeah.
And I think I love that. I love baking. I'd make a great pie, I think.
Favorite pie to bake? Is that too hard?
This bourbon peach pie that I make is really killer.
Yum.
Yeah.
Okay. My last question that I have for you is, I'm guessing even out of people watching this maybe, there are some people that would maybe want to come visit sometime. How would people come and find you? What days of the week do you have your services? Maybe you have a midweek service. I heard you say something about outdoors. So let people know how they would come and find you.
So summertime is a little bit lazy, like we're kicking back a little bit. And so we don't have any midweek programming during the summer.
Okay.
But we are worshiping at 10 o'clock. And we're worshiping outdoors because we have this beautiful space. It's in the shade, and we're down with lawn chairs, and people are throwing blankets on the grass, and we have the band outside. And we started this because of COVID, but this year we didn't really have to keep it going, but people really liked it.
Yeah.
It's really an opportunity for us to be a little bit more laid back, and the kids can do programming alongside, and it's really nice. During the sort of program year, mid-August to the end of May, we worship here in the sanctuary at 10 o'clock. We have one service. You can't really see from this video, but our sanctuary seats many hundreds of people, so we have plenty of room. And we have parallel programming for kids. We have a nursery, all of that stuff. Of course, COVID, we were all online. So you can find us on Facebook and YouTube as well. Okay. And those services are there forever. So if you did want to check us out, that's the place to go and say, hey, what are those sermons like? Or hey, what's the band like?
Yeah.
And then, we have things like, I do a Bible study midweek from September to May. We have adult programming on Sunday mornings. So yeah, we have more of a full menu once school starts.
Well, I do have to say that their grounds here are absolutely gorgeous. You walk in and you just feel like, it's almost like walking into another world.
Yeah.
It's just very calm, serene, very peaceful, and so I love that. And so you've got to come check out at least just for that.
There's also some Pokemon Go emblems all around the property, apparently. So check those out too.
For those of you that Pokemon Go people, you can come here and get those. I don't know anything about that, but it sounds like it would be fun. Thank you so much for having me here.
Thank you for having me.
Thank
you for having me on your show.
Yes, exactly. I want to say thank you for watching. We will be back next week. We're going to be listening to Reverend Linda at Unity Church. I don't know a lot about it, so it's going to be exciting to listen to her talk. They also claim to be affirming and accepting, and so I want to talk with her just to see what they have. And join me back next week, same time, same place. We'll see you then. Bye.
Bye, thanks.